You are not lacking success, but losing yourself in thoughts you never examine. You wake with plans, yet act under impulses you never question and call it normal life. You react to people before you understand your own judgment, and then wonder why peace feels unstable. This is the point where a mind begins to change, not by adding more goals, but by governing itself with reason and separating what is within control from what is not. Stay with this series if you are willing to look at your own thinking without escape or excuses. Subscribe if you want steady guidance in practicing discipline over your attention, your desires, and your daily choices, not in theory but in lived action. What follows is not comfort. It is clarity for a mind ready to become responsible for itself. Number 1. Govern your thoughts before they govern your entire life. Look at your mind before you look at your life. That is where the trouble begins, and that is where it must be ended. Most people beg for success while their own thoughts drag them in the opposite direction. They want peace but feed themselves disorder. They want progress but defend their bad habits. They want strength but keep surrendering their judgment to fear, anger, laziness, and craving. Nothing in your outer life will become stable until the inner ruler becomes strict. A man does not fail because the world is hard. He fails because he lets every impression enter and every impulse rule. He sees one setback and calls it disaster. He hears one harsh word and calls it insult. He meets one delay and calls it injustice. Then he wonders why his days are weak and his work is scattered. Your life is shaped by what you permit in your mind. Your success begins with the thoughts you refuse to obey. You must understand this clearly. Thoughts are not commands. Feelings are not laws. First impressions are not truth. A thing appears, that is all. Then your mind adds a judgment to it. It says this is unbearable. It says this is shameful. It says I cannot do this. It says I must have that. It says they have disrespected me. It says I have been treated unfairly. The impression itself is one thing. Your assent to it is another. Between what happens and what you choose there is a space. Most people never use that space. They rush to react and then call their reaction their identity. But you are not required to obey the first thought that enters your mind. You are not required to kneel before every mood. You are not required to treat every fear as wisdom. You can examine, you can delay, you can ask whether the thought is true, whether it is useful, and whether it serves virtue. That is the beginning of self-government. If your mind is full of complaint, you will move through life as a slave while calling yourself free. You will waste strength on what cannot be controlled and neglect what must be controlled. You will spend your hours on worry about the future, on regret about the past, on imagined injuries, on imagined failures, on imagined praise and imagined rejection. None of that builds a sound character. None of that makes a reliable worker, a steady friend, a just leader, or a calm human being. The one who has not learned to govern thought is carried everywhere by outer events. He is high when praised and low when ignored. He is bold when things go well and broken when they do not. He has no center. His mind is a weather vane. That is not a life. That is drift. So begin here, not with the world, not with other people, not with the next achievement. Begin with your own judgment. Ask yourself each morning what kind of day lies before you and what kind of mind you intend to bring into it. Not what feelings will visit you. They will come. Some will be welcome. Some will not. The question is what rule they will hold over you. You may feel tired and still act with discipline. You may feel uncertain and still think clearly. You may feel annoyed and still speak with justice. You may feel afraid and still do what is right. Virtue does not wait for comfort. It acts under pressure. That is why the first work is to train the mind to answer every impression with reason instead of surrender. Do not tell yourself that your thoughts are too fast to stop. That is a lazy excuse. A trained mind is not one that never receives disturbance, it is one that notices disturbance early. It is one that has learned to pause before agreeing. When anger rises, it says stop. When envy whispers, it says stop. When fear predicts ruin, it says stop. When desire promises relief through foolish action, it says stop. You have the power to place a hand on the wheel before the mind crashes into the wall. That power is not magical. It is built through use. Each time you refuse a false judgment, you strengthen the soul that governs. Each time you accept a false judgment, you weaken it. Small choices are not small. They become habit. Habit becomes character. Character becomes fate in action. If you want success, then you must define success correctly. Success is not the applause of others. It is not a full account. It is not fame. It is not the admiration of a crowd that does not know your private life. Success is the steady practice of reason in every condition. Success is the use of your mind according to nature and duty. Success is the refusal to become corrupt in pursuit of gain. Success is the ability to remain just when you could cheat. Success is the ability to remain calm when you could panic. Success is the ability to remain modest when you could boast. Success is the ability to remain disciplined when you could indulge. If your mind is not ordered to these things, then what you call success is only a larger form of chaos. A man may collect many things and still be inwardly poor. He may rise in rank and sink in character. He may be admired and remain miserable. Do not trade your soul for appearance. You are not born to be ruled by every passing thought. You are born with reason so that you may examine life and choose well. Reason is not coldness, it is clear sight. It does not invent comfort. It does not flatter weakness. It tells you what is. It tells you that some things depend on you and some do not. It tells you that your opinion, judgment, desire, aversion, and action are yours. It tells you that the body ages, that others act as they will, that money comes and goes, that health can fail, that plans can be broken, that reputation can vanish. These things are not yours to command. What is yours is how you meet them. That is enough for a noble life. In fact, it is the only place noble life ever begins. Many people are exhausted not because life is too heavy, but because their thoughts are lawless. They wake up and immediately consume noise. They look at messages and compare themselves. They open the day by handing their mind to other people. Then they wonder why they cannot focus. They wonder why they feel weak. They wonder why their work is shallow. They wonder why they cannot stay with one task. A mind that has not been trained will run to pleasure and flee from effort. It will seek distraction when it should seek truth. It will seek comfort when it should seek growth. It will avoid the difficult sentence, the hard phone call, the honest apology, the plain task, the unfinished duty. Then it will call avoidance rest. It is not rest, it is surrender. You must become strict with yourself. Not cruel, strict. There is a difference. Cruelty harms the soul. Strictness protects it. A good commander does not let disorder spread through the camp. A good farmer does not let weeds take over the field. A good mind does not allow every thought to sit down and eat at the table. Learn to question the thought that says, I cannot. Is it true or only familiar? Learn to question the thought that says, I deserve ease before effort. Is that reason or indulgence? Learn to question the thought that says, this insult must be answered at once. Is revenge a sign of strength or a sign that your pride is fragile? Learn to question the thought that says, I will be happy when the outer world changes. Is happiness something given by chance or something built by virtue? The answer is plain if you are honest. Many of your thoughts have been leading you astray for years because you have never challenged them. The mind must be taught to stand at its own gate. Nothing enters without inspection. This is one of the highest practices. It is also one of the simplest. When a thought arrives, do not call it truth merely because it arrived quickly. When a desire rises, do not call it good merely because it feels strong. When a fear rises, do not call it prophecy merely because it feels urgent. Ask what this thought is doing to your character. Ask whether it strengthens justice, courage, self-control, and wisdom. If it does not, then it is noise. You do not need to believe everything that crosses your inner sky. Clouds pass, the sky remains. Let your ruling mind be the sky and not the storm. This discipline must be practiced in the small moments because the small moments become the great ones. When you are alone and no one sees you, will you still govern your mind? When you are online and tempted by endless appetite, will you still govern your mind? When someone speaks to you in a way that stirs your pride, will you still govern your mind? When success begins to arrive and vanity invites itself in, will you still govern your mind? When failure arrives and despair knocks at the door, will you still govern your mind? The training is the same. Return to reason, refuse excess, separate what is in your power from what is not. Choose the right action and let the rest go. Do not imagine that self-government is achieved once and for all. It is practiced daily. The mind is like a horse that must be guided again and again. If you loosen the reins too soon, it runs wild. If you tighten them with panic, you bruise it. The wise man corrects with firmness and patience. He knows the mind will resist at first because it has long been allowed to wander. But he also knows that what is repeated becomes easier. The first time you refuse a thought that feeds anger may be difficult. The 10th time is less difficult. The 100th time begins to become part of your nature. That is how a man is remade. Not by speeches, by repetition. You may ask what success has to do with all this. Everything. Because a mind that cannot govern itself cannot build anything stable. A business formed by a scattered mind will be unstable. A career shaped by fear will be unstable. A relationship guided by impulse will be unstable. A body trained by craving will be unstable. A life driven by opinion and comparison will be unstable. But a mind governed by reason becomes steady in work, steady in speech, steady in choice, steady under stress. Such a mind is capable of long labor. It does not collapse when the first result is not immediate. It does not become bitter when another person is praised. It does not inflate itself when praised. It does not disgrace itself when overlooked. It keeps moving toward what is right. And over time, that is what succeeds. Not the frantic mind, the disciplined one. There is a plain exercise for this. In the morning before you begin your day, sit for a few moments and look at the tasks ahead, not to worry over them, to prepare your judgment. Say to yourself that some people will be rude, some work will be boring, some things will go wrong, some delays will happen, some desires will not be satisfied, some praise will be unfair, some criticism will be unfair, some opportunities will fail to appear. None of this surprises the wise man. He does not seek a life without resistance. He seeks a mind that meets resistance well. Then tell yourself what remains in your power, your effort, your honesty, your patience, your restraint, your fairness, your courage, your refusal to become petty, your refusal to panic, your refusal to lie to yourself. These are yours. Guard them. This simple morning act keeps the mind from sleepwalking into the day. Then when the day begins and a thought appears that threatens your peace, do not argue with it like a fool arguing in the market. Stop and classify it. Is this within my control or not? If it is within my control, then act. If it is not, then release it. If it is partly within your control, then do your part and leave the rest to the order of events. You may not control the result of your effort, but you do control whether you are honest in the effort. You may not control whether others understand you, but you do control whether you speak clearly and justly. You may not control whether a plan succeeds, but you do control whether you pursue it with discipline. This division is not a game of words. It is the foundation of freedom. The man who confuses these two categories will spend his life trying to govern what cannot be governed and neglecting what must be governed. That is the source of much pain. Look at worry itself. Most worry is imagination pretending to be preparation. It is the mind wandering into the future and borrowing trouble from a time that has not arrived. You do not need that. You need present judgment. The future is not in your hand. The present is. A single honest act done now is worth more than 1,000 imagined fears. When worry begins, ask what duty stands before you in this moment. Then do that duty. If you can make the next right choice, you have already begun to defeat worry. For worry thrives on emptiness. It grows when the mind is idle and self-absorbed. Duty cuts it down. There is also the disease of comparison. It enters quietly. You see another person's progress, and your mind starts to measure your worth against their display. This is poison. Their path is not your path. Their gifts are not your gifts. Their burdens are not your burdens. Their timing is not your timing. What matters is whether you are living according to reason and virtue today. Comparison makes a man forget his own work. It shifts his gaze from his own obligations to the spectacle of another life. That is wasted attention, and attention is the material of a life. Spend it poorly and the life becomes poor. Spend it wisely and the life becomes strong. Guard your attention as if it were money in a time of famine, because it is more precious than money. What you attend to shapes what you become. If you attend to gossip, you become shallow. If you attend to outrage, you become unstable. If you attend to praise, you become vain. If you attend to temptation, you become weakened. If you attend to duty, you become useful. If you attend to what is honorable, you become honorable. The mind takes on the color of its focus. Therefore be selective. Not everything deserves your mind. Most things do not. The world is loud, but you need not be. Your silence can be a form of strength when that silence is filled with judgment and purpose. Do not seek to silence the mind by force alone. Train it with work. An idle mind breeds restless thoughts. Give it tasks that matter. Read with attention. Reflect on your conduct. Write down where you failed to reason well. Prepare for difficult conversations. Rehearse your response to temptation. Imagine the day ahead and the likely moments of weakness. This is not fear, it is training. Soldiers prepare before battle. Athletes prepare before performance. The soul also must prepare. When you rehearse virtue before the hour of trial, you are less likely to be seized by panic when trial comes. Practice is what makes reason ready. And be honest about your habits. If you keep returning to the same distractions, do not lie to yourself by calling them harmless. If you keep feeding your mind with whatever feels easy, do not pretend you are resting. If you keep avoiding the one task that would make the biggest difference, do not say you are waiting for the right mood. The right mood is not your master. The right action is. Many lives are damaged, not by sudden failure, but by repeated small betrayals of duty. A man says later and later and later until his strength is gone. A disciplined mind says now, not because it feels wonderful, but because it is right. The man who governs his thoughts must also govern his speech. Words reveal the state of the ruling mind. The mind that has become wild will speak in complaint, exaggeration, excuses, and unnecessary heat. A disciplined mind speaks with restraint. It does not rush to be heard. It does not seek victory in every conversation. It does not turn every disagreement into a wound. It speaks what is true and useful. It does not add what is merely sharp. In your work, this matters. In your home, this matters. In your friendships, this matters. In your solitude, this matters. Let your speech be a proof that you have not surrendered your mind to passion. You must also learn the discipline of voluntary hardship. This is one of the cleanest ways to free the mind from softness. Do without comfort on purpose, sometimes so that you may prove to yourself that comfort is not your ruler. Take a cold shower. Walk without complaint when the weather is unpleasant. Eat more simply on certain days. Put aside needless convenience, not to punish the body but to teach the mind that it can endure. A person who practices discomfort becomes less afraid of loss. He learns that he can remain whole without excess. He is less likely to panic when life denies him what he prefers. This strength is precious because a mind that fears inconvenience will make poor choices for the sake of ease, and poor choices destroy success more surely than hardship does. When pain enters, do not immediately ask how to escape it. Ask what it requires of you. Sometimes pain requires rest. Sometimes it requires action. Sometimes it requires patience. Sometimes it requires silence. Sometimes it requires medicine. But always it requires judgment. Do not let pain make you dishonest. Do not let it make you mean. Do not let it make you lazy. Do not let it make you think the world owes you comfort. Suffering does not justify corruption. Hardship is not an excuse to become less upright. On the contrary, it is an opportunity to show the quality of your soul. The mind that has been trained sees hardship as a field for virtue. What about mistakes? You will make them. The disciplined mind does not deny this, it studies them. When you think badly and act badly, do not add further ruin by sinking into self-pity. Self-pity is another form of surrender. It says, "I have failed, therefore I am lost." That is false. You failed in a judgment or action. That is serious, but it is not the end. Ask what false belief led to the failure. Ask what desire was allowed too much power. Ask what fear made you small. Then correct it. The goal is not to defend the self-image. The goal is to improve the soul. A man who can admit error without drama has begun to become free. This is why evening examination matters. At the end of the day, sit with yourself in plain honesty. Ask where you acted with reason and where you did not. Ask where you spoke too sharply, where you were lazy, where you avoided duty, where you gave in to appetite, where you clung to praise, where you let anger overtake you. Do not turn this into theater. No excuses, no flattering lies, no harsh self-hatred either, just truth. What was done well? What was done poorly? What should be corrected tomorrow? This practice is not for shame, it is for sharpening. Every day that ends with honest review makes the next day stronger. A mind that examines itself becomes harder to deceive. And a mind that is hard to deceive is a mind on the path to freedom. Most people never become free because they never question their own thoughts. They assume the mind speaks with authority simply because it speaks first. But the first thought is often a mere reaction shaped by habit. The second thought can be wiser if you give it time. The third can be wiser still if you train it. Between stimulus and response there is room for discipline. Use that room. That is your power. That is the place where character is made. Do not waste it. The mind also loves stories about itself. It tells you that you are too late, that you missed your chance, that other people are naturally stronger, that you are too damaged, that you will always be this way. These are not facts. They are judgments made by a tired mind. Refuse them. Nature does not ask whether you feel ready to become better. It asks whether you will use what has been given to you. You have reason, you have choice, you have the ability to begin now. That is enough. A better life begins not when every obstacle is removed, but when the ruling mind decides to rule. Think of your habits as the shape of your life. A single act repeated becomes a groove. The mind follows grooves. Therefore, make the grooves clean. Choose where your attention goes. Choose what you say yes to. Choose what you refuse. Choose the books you read. Choose the messages you answer. Choose the conversations you prolong. Choose the food you take. Choose the thoughts you entertain. None of this is trivial. Small choices make the soul. If you let trivial things command you, then the great things will never be governed well. A man who cannot govern a small appetite will not govern a large ambition. A man who cannot govern a small irritation will not govern a hard season. A man who cannot govern a small thought will not govern a difficult life. And remember that the goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become just. A just mind feels what is fitting but is not seized by what it feels. It can grieve without collapsing. It can rejoice without becoming foolish. It can desire what is good without becoming greedy. It can fear what is shameful without becoming cowardly. It can be angry at wrongdoing without becoming wild. Emotion must not be erased. It must be educated. The mind is not meant to be numb. It is meant to be governed. There is a great difference. When people treat you badly, do not let their behavior train your thoughts into ugliness. Their character is theirs. Your response is yours. Do not imitate what is beneath you. Do not let another person's disorder pull you into yours. If they lie, remain truthful. If they mock, remain steady. If they provoke, remain measured. If they disappoint, remain just. If they ignore you, remain diligent. Your power lies not in controlling them, but in refusing to become like them. That is an act of strength. That is also an act of self-respect. There will be moments when the mind asks for escape. It will say, scroll a little longer, sleep a little later, postpone the hard thing, take the easier road, answer the craving, take the shortcut, say what will please them, forget the duty for now. This is the voice that weakens success. It promises relief, but charges you with yourself. Every time you obey it, you teach your mind that discipline is optional. Every time you resist it, you teach your mind that reason is master. There is no small betrayal. The soul remembers what it allows. So be careful what you allow when no one is watching. In that hidden place, your life is being formed. Your work will not become great by accident. It will become great when your inner life stops undermining it. The distracted mind cannot do careful work. The resentful mind cannot do just work. The fearful mind cannot do bold work. The indulgent mind cannot do consistent work. The undisciplined mind cannot do enduring work. But the mind that has learned to govern itself can. It can sit, it can focus, it can finish, it can endure boredom without fleeing. It can endure delay without complaint. It can endure criticism without collapse. It can return to the task after interruption. That mind is rare. That mind is powerful. That mind is successful in the only deep sense. Do not wait for inspiration. It is an unreliable guest. Build routine instead. Rise with intention. Review your duties. Protect your attention. Move your body. Face the task you have been avoiding. Speak plainly. Eat moderately. Pause before reacting. Examine your judgments. Review your day. Go to bed having learned something about yourself. This is not glamorous. It is far better than glamour. It is the daily craft of a free person. Success is rarely the reward of a dramatic moment. It is the result of small decisions repeated with moral seriousness. There is a severe mercy in this path. It asks much of you but gives you yourself back. It strips away the false comfort of blame. It removes the excuse that others must change before you can live well. It tells you that your peace does not depend on the world bending to your wishes. It tells you that your freedom begins where your judgments become clean. This is hard truth, but hard truth is a kindness when it ends confusion. Better to be corrected now than to wander for years in self-deception. So today begin. Do not begin by attempting to fix everything. Begin by watching your thoughts with honesty. Notice where they run wild. Notice where they beg for comfort. Notice where they dramatize. Notice where they fear. Notice where they crave approval. Notice where they excuse laziness. Then do not obey them blindly. Question them. Replace them with what is true. Bring them back to what depends on you. The mind changes by being trained to return again and again to reason. This return is not weakness, it is victory. Each return is a refusal to be ruled by the first impulse. Each return is a step toward mastery. When you feel the pull of old patterns, remember this: you are not trying to become a different species. You are trying to become a better ruler of the self you already have. That is enough work for a lifetime. It is also the most important work you will ever do. If your mind is governed, then your life will become ordered. If your mind is surrendered, then everything else will be vulnerable. Begin where all true change begins. Govern your thoughts. Guard your judgments. Train your attention. Refuse the lie that you are helpless before your own mind. You are not helpless. You are responsible, and in that responsibility lies your dignity. No one can think for you in the end. No one can choose virtue on your behalf. No one can pause your reaction for you. No one can remove the temptation for you. No one can make you honest with yourself. That work is yours alone. But do not make a tragedy of that fact. Make it a strength, because what is yours cannot be taken unless you give it away. Your ruling mind is yours to defend. Hold it firmly. Use it well. Today is not for drift. Today is for rule. Today is for reason. Today is for the man or woman who is tired of living at the mercy of every passing thought and ready at last to become master of the inner life. Number 2. Accept only what reason proves within your control. Most of your suffering does not begin with what happens to you. It begins with what you insist should have happened instead. You wake each morning carrying invisible demands that the world never agreed to fulfill. You expect people to understand you without effort. You expect your plans to unfold exactly as imagined. You expect hardship to arrive only when you feel prepared. Then reality refuses to obey your wishes, and you mistake that refusal for injustice. From that single mistake grows frustration, resentment, fear, and endless complaint. You search for peace while fighting against the very nature of life. Yet peace has never belonged to the person who controls events. It belongs to the one who first learns what events can never be controlled. You must begin with a question that few people are willing to ask with complete honesty. What in your life truly belongs to you? Not what you possess, not what others call yours, not your position, your reputation, your wealth, your body, or even the length of your years. These things may remain for a season, and they may disappear without asking your permission. If your peace depends upon them, then your peace has already been placed into uncertain hands. A life built upon uncertain foundations cannot remain steady. The disciplined soul refuses such dependence because it knows that whatever fortune gives, fortune may also remove. There is only one place where genuine authority begins. It begins within the judgments you choose, the intentions you form, the actions you willingly perform, and the character you shape through repeated decisions. These belong to you because no outside force can force you to surrender them without your own consent. Circumstances may limit your opportunities, but they cannot decide whether you respond with justice or bitterness. Illness may weaken the body, but it cannot command dishonesty. Poverty may reduce comfort, but it cannot steal integrity. Criticism may reach your ears, yet it cannot determine your worth unless you allow another person's opinion to replace your own reason. This is the mistake that quietly governs countless lives. People spend years trying to master everything except themselves. They attempt to manage other people's emotions. They struggle to secure universal approval. They exhaust themselves predicting every future disappointment. They replay old conversations hoping memory can rewrite the past. None of these efforts produce wisdom because none of these things belong to their authority. They work endlessly while achieving nothing that strengthens the soul. Their labor resembles someone attempting to command the wind while neglecting the condition of the house they actually live within. Look carefully at your own habits of thought. How often does your mind travel toward places where your influence ends? Perhaps you spend hours wondering whether someone respects you. Perhaps you fear losing opportunities that have not yet arrived. Perhaps you worry that your efforts will never receive recognition. Perhaps you become angry because others refuse to behave according to your standards. Each of these thoughts asks you to govern another person's choices or the unfolding of future events, yet neither has ever belonged to your care. Every minute devoted to such concerns quietly steals attention from the only work that truly matters, which is governing your own conduct. Reason speaks differently. Reason asks only one question before every situation. What is mine to do here? It never asks how to guarantee success. It never asks how to eliminate uncertainty. It never asks how to force agreement. Instead, it seeks the next honorable action available in this present moment. This question immediately removes confusion because it separates duty from fantasy. Duty belongs to you. Outcomes do not. Imagine beginning each morning with this single discipline. Before opening your messages or turning toward the noise of the day, remain still for several moments. Consider every responsibility waiting before you. Some meetings may go well, others may not. Some people may appreciate your efforts, others may misunderstand them. Unexpected delays may interrupt carefully arranged plans. None of these possibilities deserve anxiety because none of them have entered reality yet. Instead, prepare your own character. Decide that whatever arrives today, you will answer it with patience rather than irritation, fairness rather than resentment, honesty rather than convenience, and steady effort rather than complaint. In this way you prepare the one thing entirely entrusted to your care. As the day unfolds, impressions will constantly seek permission to disturb your peace. Someone speaks carelessly, a mistake costs you valuable time, a promise is broken, an opportunity disappears. At each moment, your first task is not reaction, but examination. Before emotion gathers strength, quietly ask yourself whether this event has damaged your character or merely challenged your preference. Most disturbances injure only preference. You wanted ease and received difficulty. You wanted praise and received silence. You wanted certainty and received delay. Preferences are natural, but they are not rulers. Character alone deserves that position. The undisciplined mind refuses this distinction. It treats every disappointment as though virtue itself has been threatened. A delayed train becomes an insult. A critical remark becomes proof of failure. An unexpected expense becomes evidence that life is unfair. Such thinking enlarges ordinary inconveniences into imagined catastrophes. The disciplined mind sees the same events without surrendering proportion. It understands that external conditions cannot decide whether the soul remains honorable. Therefore, it responds to difficulty without adding unnecessary suffering through exaggerated judgment. Practice this throughout ordinary moments instead of waiting for extraordinary trials. If your meal arrives later than expected, notice whether impatience immediately begins speaking within you. If another person interrupts your plans, observe whether anger demands immediate obedience. If your work becomes more difficult than anticipated, examine whether discouragement attempts to persuade you that effort has become meaningless. These moments appear small, yet they reveal whether reason truly governs your life. Great crises simply magnify habits already formed during ordinary days. Many people believe discipline exists only during dramatic moments of sacrifice. They overlook the quiet opportunities continually offered by daily life. Every interruption invites patience. Every disagreement invites fairness. Every temptation invites self-restraint. Every uncertainty invites trust in reason instead of panic. Character grows through repeated acceptance of these invitations. Ignore them, and the soul remains weak despite outward accomplishments. Accept them, and even unnoticed days become powerful exercises in freedom. There is another trap that quietly steals peace from thoughtful people. They believe careful worrying demonstrates responsibility. They mistake endless mental rehearsal for wise preparation. Yet there is a difference between planning and anxious imagination. Planning concerns actions available now. Anxiety concerns outcomes forever beyond possession. Planning asks what steps should be taken today. Anxiety demands guarantees tomorrow cannot provide. One strengthens judgment, the other weakens it through endless repetition of imagined disasters. Whenever worry appears, return immediately to the dividing line between what belongs to you and what does not. Ask yourself, what practical action remains available? If action exists, perform it calmly without delay. If no action exists, release the matter entirely because continued mental occupation cannot improve what reason has already declared outside your authority. Continuing to worry after reaching this conclusion is not wisdom. It is simply refusal to accept reality. Acceptance must never be confused with passivity. Accepting what cannot be governed does not excuse neglecting what can. On the contrary, acceptance frees energy previously wasted on impossible tasks and directs it toward meaningful effort. The person constantly demanding certainty cannot work with full attention because fear continually interrupts concentration. The person demanding approval cannot speak honestly because every sentence seeks permission from others. The person demanding comfort cannot pursue difficult responsibilities because discomfort immediately appears unbearable. Acceptance removes these chains. It allows action guided by principle rather than appetite. Consider your relationships. Much unnecessary conflict begins with attempts to control another person's thoughts. You want someone to appreciate your intentions exactly as you understand them. You want them to apologize when you believe they should. You want them to change according to your expectations, yet another person's judgment remains their own responsibility. You may speak truthfully, you may act kindly, you may establish just boundaries. Beyond that, your authority ends. Trying to command another person's inner world only disturbs your own. This understanding changes the nature of forgiveness as well. Forgiveness does not require declaring harmful actions acceptable. It simply refuses to imprison your own peace inside another person's behavior. Resentment secretly grants authority to the very person who injured you. Every day you continue replaying the offense, you permit their past action to govern your present mind. Reason quietly asks why you would surrender today's tranquility to yesterday's event. Justice may still require wise action, but bitterness never improves judgment. The same principle applies when success finally begins arriving. Praise often tempts the soul more subtly than hardship. If you believe admiration belongs within your control, you will eventually shape your life around preserving it. Then honesty becomes dangerous because truth sometimes disappoints others. Courage becomes difficult because conviction may invite criticism. Gradually your character begins serving reputation instead of reason. This reversal destroys inner freedom while appearing successful from the outside. Therefore, receive praise with gratitude but never dependence. Receive criticism with attention but never surrender. Let both pass through your mind without becoming its ruler. Ask only whether either contains useful correction. If correction exists, welcome it because improvement always benefits the disciplined soul. If no correction exists, release the judgment without hostility. Another person's opinion remains another person's possession. Every evening, return to yourself before sleep. Do not measure the day according to achievements alone. Examine something more important. Ask where you attempted to control what never belonged to you. Did you seek certainty where only effort was possible? Did you demand fairness from people incapable of offering it? Did you allow another person's mood to determine your own? Did you waste precious attention arguing inwardly against events already completed? Then ask where reason quietly prevailed. Notice moments when you accepted delay without complaint, disagreement without bitterness, uncertainty without fear, or difficulty without abandoning virtue. These victories often appear invisible to the world, yet they represent genuine progress because they strengthen the one possession no circumstance can seize. Over time, this examination changes the structure of the mind itself. Instead of immediately chasing every emotional impulse, reason gradually becomes the first voice consulted. Instead of measuring each day by comfort, you begin measuring it by integrity. Instead of asking whether life has favored you, you begin asking whether you have governed yourself well. This change transforms ordinary existence because external conditions no longer possess unlimited power over your peace. There will still be loss. There will still be disappointment. There will still be uncertainty because these belong to human life. The disciplined soul never imagines otherwise, yet each hardship becomes simpler when carried by a mind that refuses impossible burdens. You no longer attempt to command fortune. You no longer negotiate with the past. You no longer demand certainty from an uncertain world. You simply return, again and again, to the quiet authority already placed within your care. This return is not dramatic. It rarely attracts admiration. Most people will never notice the countless moments when you choose restraint instead of anger, patience instead of complaint, courage instead of avoidance, or honesty instead of convenience. Yet these unnoticed decisions gradually shape a life impossible to shake from within. While others remain exhausted pursuing mastery over circumstances, you become stronger by mastering your own judgment. That is the path before you today. Not the pursuit of perfect conditions, but the faithful governance of your own mind. Accept only what reason proves belongs within your control. Refuse ownership of burdens that were never entrusted to you. Let every morning begin with this distinction. Let every challenge test this distinction. Let every evening refine this distinction. As this practice becomes constant, you will discover a freedom untouched by praise or blame, success or failure, gain or loss. You will discover that the strongest life is not built by controlling the world, but by refusing to abandon the only kingdom that has always been yours to govern. Number 3. Reject every excuse and embrace disciplined daily action. Every day begins with a quiet decision that most people never notice. Before your feet touch the ground, your mind has already chosen whether it will serve reason or surrender to habit. This choice is rarely dramatic. It appears in small moments that seem too ordinary to matter. Yet these unnoticed moments determine the shape of an entire life. A person does not become undisciplined because of one great failure. He becomes undisciplined because he repeatedly permits small acts of avoidance to replace necessary action. Each excuse seems harmless by itself. Together they become the architecture of a wasted life. Look honestly at the excuses that appear before every meaningful duty. They rarely announce themselves as weakness. They arrive wearing the language of caution, comfort, and delay. The mind says there will be a better time. It says more preparation is needed. It says the conditions are not yet favorable. It says tomorrow will provide greater energy. These thoughts feel reasonable because they protect you from immediate discomfort. Yet reason does not ask whether a task feels pleasant. Reason asks whether the task ought to be done. There is a profound difference between these two questions. Most suffering begins when comfort becomes the judge instead of virtue. The disciplined soul refuses to negotiate endlessly with reluctance. It understands that reluctance is not an advisor deserving authority. Feelings rise and disappear like changing weather, while duty remains unchanged. If an action is honorable in the morning, it remains honorable in the afternoon even after enthusiasm has vanished. Waiting for perfect willingness places your life under the command of emotions that constantly change. A life directed by changing emotions cannot become steady because its ruler changes every hour. You may believe your greatest obstacle is lack of opportunity, lack of talent, or lack of favorable circumstances. Examine this belief carefully before accepting it. Many obstacles exist in human life, yet one obstacle appears more often than all the others combined. It is the refusal to begin while imagining that another day will somehow produce greater resolve. Delay disguises itself as patience, but they are not the same. Patience continues acting while accepting slow results. Delay avoids action while inventing comforting explanations. The first strengthens character, the second quietly weakens it. Notice how easily the mind protects its own habits. When you fail to complete an important responsibility, your first impulse may be to explain rather than examine. You point toward interruptions, difficult people, unfortunate timing, or unexpected complications. Some of these circumstances may indeed be real, yet ask yourself a more demanding question. Did these events prevent virtue, or did they merely make virtue less comfortable? This question exposes the difference between genuine limitation and convenient excuse. A disciplined life never requires ideal conditions. It requires an unwavering commitment to choose the most honorable action available under present conditions. Perhaps your plans have been disrupted. Then practice adaptability. Perhaps your strength is limited today. Then perform your duty according to your present ability without complaint. Perhaps another person's actions have complicated your work. Then respond with fairness instead of resentment. Virtue never disappears because circumstances become difficult. It simply takes a different form suited to the moment before you. Many people secretly believe discipline means forcing themselves through constant misery. This misunderstanding causes unnecessary resistance. Discipline is not hostility toward yourself. Discipline is loyalty to your highest judgment, even when easier alternatives invite surrender. It is an expression of respect for the rational part of your nature. Every time you choose the honorable action instead of the comfortable excuse, you strengthen trust in your own character. Eventually, your mind learns that your decisions are not controlled by passing impulses, but by carefully examined principles. Begin practicing this truth before the day's demands become overwhelming. Rise each morning with deliberate stillness instead of immediate distraction. Before reaching for any device or entering the noise of the world, ask yourself one question. What duties belong to me today, regardless of how I feel? Write them plainly. Do not decorate them with ambitious promises or impossible expectations. Simplicity is the ally of discipline. Identify the actions that reason requires, then prepare yourself to perform them without bargaining. As you move through the day, observe how frequently your thoughts attempt to renegotiate responsibilities already accepted. You begin an important task, and almost immediately the mind suggests another activity that feels easier. You prepare to speak honestly, and suddenly silence appears more convenient. You intend to exercise restraint, and appetite offers immediate satisfaction instead. These moments reveal the true battlefield. The struggle is rarely against the outside world. It is between reason and impulse inside your own judgment. When this inner conflict appears, avoid arguing endlessly with temptation. Lengthy debate often strengthens the very impulse you hope to overcome. Instead, quietly return to first principles. Ask whether the action before you contributes to wisdom, justice, courage, or self-restraint. If it does, begin immediately. If it does not, decline it without resentment. The disciplined mind does not waste energy seeking permission to do what reason has already approved. There is another subtle excuse that deserves careful examination. It is the belief that one imperfect day justifies abandoning the entire effort. You fail once, and the mind declares the whole practice ruined. You lose patience during one conversation, and suddenly you question whether disciplined living is even possible. This judgment lacks reason. Character is not formed by flawless performance. Character is formed by faithful return. Every honest correction strengthens the soul more than self-condemnation ever could. Treat each mistake as material for instruction rather than evidence against yourself. Ask what false judgment preceded the action. Perhaps you believed comfort deserved priority over duty. Perhaps you feared another person's opinion more than dishonesty. Perhaps you allowed immediate pleasure to outweigh long-term integrity. Whatever the error, identify it precisely. Correction becomes possible only after honest recognition. Excuses hide the wound. Examination begins healing it. You will also discover that disciplined action gradually changes the quality of thought itself. At first, the mind resists responsibility because it expects discomfort without reward. After repeated practice, something remarkable occurs. The mind begins trusting that honorable action produces inner stability regardless of external results. This trust reduces hesitation because experience has already proven that integrity carries its own reward. You no longer require constant emotional motivation. Confidence grows from evidence collected through daily practice. Pay close attention to how you speak about your responsibilities. Language reveals hidden judgments. When you repeatedly say you have to perform certain duties, you quietly present yourself as a victim of circumstance. Replace this habit with a more truthful understanding. You choose these actions because they express the person you intend to become. The disciplined soul acts willingly, not because every task is enjoyable, but because every worthy action strengthens character. Duty accepted freely becomes lighter than duty resisted inwardly. Avoid comparing your progress with that of others. Such comparison easily becomes another excuse. You may conclude that another person possesses greater natural ability, more favorable opportunities, or fewer obstacles. None of these observations improve your own conduct. They merely distract attention from the only field entrusted to your care. Measure yourself against yesterday's judgments, yesterday's discipline, yesterday's honesty. This comparison remains useful because it directs attention toward improvement instead of envy. There will be days when effort seems unnoticed. Others may misunderstand your intentions or overlook your work entirely. Do not permit this to weaken your resolve. If your commitment depends upon recognition, then recognition has become your master. Let virtue remain sufficient reason for action. The value of honesty does not increase because someone praises it. The value of courage does not diminish because someone ignores it. Right action possesses worth independent of public approval. Another practice deserves a permanent place within your daily routine. Whenever you notice yourself offering an explanation for neglected duty, pause before speaking further. Ask whether the explanation clarifies reality or merely protects pride. This distinction requires courage because pride naturally seeks escape from responsibility. Yet every excuse accepted weakens the authority of reason. Every excuse rejected strengthens it. Eventually, the habit of self-deception loses its influence because the mind understands that only truth will receive acceptance. Do not imagine that disciplined living eliminates hardship. Hardship belongs to every human life. The difference lies in your response. An undisciplined person meets difficulty with complaint, delay, and blame. A disciplined person meets the same difficulty with careful judgment and appropriate action. External events may remain identical, yet the quality of the inner life becomes entirely different. One soul is scattered by circumstances, the other remains united because it serves principles instead of preferences. As evening approaches, return once more to quiet examination. Do not ask whether the day felt comfortable. Ask whether you honored the responsibilities reason placed before you. Where did excuses attempt to guide your choices? Where did you refuse them? Where did hesitation replace action? Where did integrity prevail despite discomfort? Let these questions sharpen tomorrow's judgment rather than burden today's conscience. Honest review transforms ordinary experience into lasting wisdom. Gradually you will notice a profound change taking place. The excuses that once appeared convincing lose their authority. You begin recognizing them as familiar habits instead of reliable guides. Action becomes more immediate because judgment has become clearer. You spend less energy defending yourself and more energy improving yourself. The mind grows quieter because it no longer carries the weight of endless justification. Instead of asking why circumstances make discipline difficult, you begin asking how every circumstance can become material for virtue. This is the freedom earned through daily action governed by reason. It cannot be purchased, borrowed, or granted by another person. It grows slowly through repeated choices that often appear insignificant to everyone except the one making them. Yet these small decisions gradually reshape an entire character. They teach the soul that excuses never build strength, while faithful action always does. So when the next morning arrives, do not wait for extraordinary inspiration. Rise prepared to meet ordinary duties with extraordinary honesty. Refuse every explanation that asks you to abandon what reason has already approved. Accept discomfort without resentment when it accompanies honorable effort. Let each completed duty become quiet evidence that your character is no longer governed by convenience but by deliberate choice. In this way, each day becomes more than another passage of time. It becomes another step toward a life directed by unwavering discipline, clear judgment, and the enduring freedom that belongs only to the person who acts according to reason rather than excuse. Number 4. Strengthen your character through consistent, virtuous daily choices. You do not become a person of strong character in a single extraordinary moment. You become that person through hundreds of ordinary decisions that almost no one notices. The world often celebrates dramatic achievements while ignoring the quiet discipline that made them possible. Yet reason does not concern itself with appearances. It looks beneath every visible result and asks a simpler question. What kind of person are you becoming through the choices you repeat each day? Your answer is never found in your intentions alone. It is revealed by the habits you willingly practice when no one is watching. Many people spend years trying to change their circumstances while leaving their character untouched. They believe a different job, greater wealth, wider recognition, or easier relationships will finally produce peace. Yet wherever they go, they carry the same undisciplined judgments with them. They continue reacting without examination. They continue chasing approval. They continue resisting unavoidable hardship. They continue expecting comfort to appear before duty. The surroundings may change, but the governing principles remain unchanged. As long as the inner ruler remains weak, every new circumstance eventually becomes another place where the same suffering repeats itself. The person devoted to wisdom understands that lasting change begins from a different direction. Instead of asking how life should improve, ask how your character should improve. This question immediately returns responsibility to its rightful place. You cannot command the behavior of others, the timing of opportunity, or the unfolding of fortune. You can decide whether honesty will govern your speech today. You can decide whether patience will govern your reactions. You can decide whether fairness will guide your dealings with every person you encounter. These decisions appear small because they happen quietly, yet they shape the quality of an entire life more deeply than any external achievement ever could. Character is not an invisible possession hidden somewhere inside you. Character is expressed every time judgment becomes action. It appears when someone speaks harshly and you refuse unnecessary hostility. It appears when a difficult responsibility demands effort and you perform it without searching for excuses. It appears when temptation offers immediate pleasure at the expense of integrity and you quietly decline. It appears when success arrives and you remain humble rather than becoming proud. Every situation presents an opportunity to strengthen or weaken the governing part of yourself. Nothing is neutral once reason begins paying attention. One of the greatest errors is believing that virtue belongs only to remarkable occasions. You imagine courage is needed only during great danger. You imagine justice matters only inside important decisions. You imagine self-restraint is required only during overwhelming temptation. Yet character is shaped long before these moments arrive. The soul practices every day. Small conversations prepare you for serious conversations. Ordinary inconveniences prepare you for genuine hardship. Simple acts of honesty prepare you for situations where honesty carries greater cost. Every ordinary moment quietly trains the person you will become when greater tests finally appear. Begin each morning by remembering that the coming hours are not merely opportunities to accomplish tasks. They are opportunities to refine your character. Before thinking about success, think about conduct. Before measuring productivity, measure intention. Tell yourself that throughout this day, countless situations will invite impatience, pride, fear, distraction, and unnecessary desire. None of these invitations require acceptance. You possess the ability to examine each one before allowing it to influence your actions. This preparation gives direction to the mind before circumstances begin making demands upon it. Carry one simple question throughout the day. What response strengthens my character in this moment? This question changes everything because it shifts attention away from immediate comfort. Instead of asking what feels easiest, you ask what expresses wisdom. Instead of asking what protects your pride, you ask what reflects justice. Instead of asking how to avoid inconvenience, you ask how to practice endurance without complaint. Every honest answer strengthens the foundation upon which all future decisions will rest. Do not underestimate the influence of repeated judgments. Every judgment accepted without examination gradually becomes part of your habitual thinking. If you repeatedly judge inconvenience as unbearable, your patience becomes weaker. If you repeatedly judge criticism as personal attack, your composure becomes fragile. If you repeatedly judge pleasure as necessary for happiness, your freedom quietly disappears. Character is shaped by the beliefs you repeatedly allow to guide your conduct. Therefore, guard your judgments with greater care than you guard your possessions. There will be moments when another person's behavior tempts you toward actions unworthy of your principles. Someone may speak unfairly. Someone may betray your trust. Someone may ignore your efforts entirely. At that moment, you face an important choice. Will you allow another person's conduct to determine your own? Or will you remain faithful to the standards reason has already established? Character becomes strongest precisely when it refuses to imitate what it knows is wrong. Another person's failure never grants permission for your own. You must also become attentive to the invisible compromises that slowly weaken integrity. Rarely does a person abandon virtue through one dramatic decision. More often, it happens through small concessions repeatedly accepted without resistance. You overlook one dishonest word because it seems convenient. You ignore one neglected responsibility because no one will notice. You excuse one unnecessary complaint because the day has been difficult. These choices appear insignificant, yet each one teaches the mind that principle may be exchanged whenever comfort demands it. A soul trained in such exchanges gradually loses confidence in its own judgment. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A single day of extraordinary discipline cannot compensate for weeks of careless living. Character grows through faithful repetition rather than occasional enthusiasm. Perform honorable actions whether the day feels inspiring or ordinary. Speak truthfully whether others appreciate it or not. Practice moderation, whether abundance surrounds you or scarcity visits your life. Let your conduct remain steady because it rests upon reason rather than changing emotion. You may sometimes become discouraged because progress seems invisible. Remember that the deepest improvements often occur where public attention never reaches. Greater patience cannot always be measured immediately. Increased self-restraint rarely receives applause. A calmer response to disappointment may pass unnoticed by everyone except your own conscience. Yet these quiet victories deserve greater respect than visible achievements because they strengthen the one possession capable of remaining with you under every circumstance. Another daily discipline deserves careful attention. Throughout the day, pause briefly before important actions and ask what motive is guiding you. Are you speaking to appear impressive or to express truth? Are you working merely to collect praise or because diligence itself is honorable? Are you helping another person expecting repayment or because kindness reflects good character? Motive quietly shapes the moral quality of every action. The same outward behavior may strengthen the soul or weaken it depending upon the intention directing it. You will also discover that character becomes stronger whenever you willingly accept responsibilities appropriate to your place in life. Avoid the temptation to complain about duties simply because they require effort. Every responsibility offers material for virtue. Caring faithfully for your family strengthens loyalty. Performing honest work strengthens diligence. Treating strangers with fairness strengthens justice. Enduring disappointment without bitterness strengthens resilience. Life continually provides opportunities to practice excellence if you approach each circumstance with the right judgment. Guard yourself against seeking shortcuts in moral development. Modern thinking often promises rapid transformation through dramatic experiences. Reason teaches something different. Lasting strength is built patiently through disciplined repetition. Every morning begins the same work again. Every conversation presents another opportunity. Every challenge asks the same question. Will you choose according to principle or according to impulse? No single answer completes the task forever. Character remains alive only through continual practice. As evening arrives, resist the temptation to measure yourself solely by accomplishments completed or goals achieved. Examine something more lasting. Ask whether your conduct reflected wisdom throughout the day. Did you preserve fairness when dealing with difficult people? Did you remain truthful when convenience suggested otherwise? Did you exercise moderation where excess invited you? Did courage govern your actions when hesitation appeared? This examination should never become an occasion for self-condemnation. Its purpose is refinement. Honest observation reveals where tomorrow's practice should become more attentive. If you discover failure, do not conceal it behind comforting explanations. Accept responsibility calmly. Every error contains instruction when examined honestly. Ask which judgment produced the mistake. Perhaps pride desired recognition, perhaps fear exaggerated discomfort, perhaps impatience refused to endure temporary difficulty. Once the false judgment becomes visible, its influence begins to weaken. A person committed to virtue welcomes this process because correction matters more than protecting appearance. Likewise, do not become proud when you notice improvement. Pride quietly replaces devotion to virtue with admiration of oneself. Continue practicing with humility. Every day offers fresh opportunities for both success and failure. Character remains secure only while reason continues governing it carefully. The disciplined soul never assumes the work has been completed. It understands that excellence requires continual attention until the final day of life. Notice how your relationships begin changing as your character becomes steadier. You no longer demand constant agreement because fairness has replaced insecurity. You no longer react impulsively because patience has become stronger than irritation. You no longer seek victory in every disagreement because truth matters more than personal triumph. Others may or may not change in response, yet your own conduct becomes increasingly reliable. This reliability creates a peace independent of external approval because it rests upon the knowledge that your actions remain consistent with your principles. Eventually, you will recognize that genuine success has always depended upon this quiet work. Without character, achievement easily becomes arrogance. Without character, influence becomes manipulation. Without character, intelligence becomes self-deception. Without character, comfort becomes weakness. Yet when character governs every decision, even ordinary days become deeply meaningful because each action contributes to the formation of a soul capable of meeting fortune with dignity and hardship with unwavering composure. So let tomorrow begin with a different ambition than the one the world usually celebrates. Do not first ask how much you will gain. Ask how faithfully you will live. Do not first ask how many people will admire you. Ask whether your conduct deserves your own respect. Do not first ask whether circumstances will become easier. Ask whether your character will become stronger regardless of circumstances. Then move quietly through the day, making one virtuous choice after another. Let honesty guide your speech. Let justice govern your dealings. Let moderation shape your desires. Let courage steady your actions. Allow each deliberate choice to strengthen the ruling part of your soul until virtue no longer feels like occasional effort, but becomes the natural expression of who you have patiently trained yourself to become. Number 5. Examine every judgment before allowing emotion to command. Your life is not directed first by events. It is directed by the judgments you quietly accept about those events. Before anger rises, a judgment has already been made. Before fear begins to tighten your thoughts, a judgment has already taken root. Before resentment settles into the heart, the mind has already declared that something unbearable has happened. Emotion does not appear from nowhere. It follows the path laid down by judgment. If you wish to govern your inner life, you must stop trying to control emotion after it has gathered strength. You must learn to examine the judgment that invited it inside. Most people never notice this moment because it passes quickly. Something happens, and almost immediately they believe the first explanation offered by the mind. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A mistake becomes proof of failure. A disagreement becomes disrespect. A loss becomes evidence that life has turned against them. They never pause long enough to ask whether these conclusions deserve acceptance. They mistake speed for truth, yet reason is never hurried. It asks for evidence before agreement. It refuses to surrender the peace of the soul to an opinion that has not been carefully tested. There is a profound difference between experiencing an impression and giving that impression authority over your conduct. Every day your senses bring countless impressions before your mind. Some are pleasant, others are uncomfortable. None of them deserve immediate obedience. They are simply visitors arriving at the gate of your judgment. The undisciplined person opens the gate without question. The disciplined person asks whether each visitor should be welcomed or turned away. This single habit quietly separates the peaceful soul from the restless one. Imagine someone speaking harshly to you. The words reach your ears, but your suffering has not yet begun. Suffering begins when the mind immediately declares that your dignity has been damaged. From that judgment, anger gathers strength. Pride demands retaliation. The conversation continues long after it has ended because your own thoughts refuse to release it. Yet another response was always available. You could have examined the situation before accepting the first interpretation. You could have asked whether another person's lack of self-control truly possesses the power to diminish your own character. Once reason asks this question, emotion begins losing its command. The same process appears whenever fear enters your thinking. An uncertain future presents itself, and the mind immediately begins writing stories that have never occurred. It predicts failure before effort has even begun. It imagines humiliation before any judgment has been made. It invents disasters that exist nowhere except within anxious imagination. Fear then feels justified because the mind has mistaken imagined events for present reality. Reason quietly interrupts this habit. It asks what actually exists before you now. It asks what duty belongs to this present moment. It refuses to sacrifice today's clarity for tomorrow's uncertainty. Notice how frequently your strongest emotions are built upon assumptions rather than facts. You assume another person's silence carries hostility. You assume one setback predicts permanent defeat. You assume temporary discomfort means something has gone terribly wrong. These assumptions rarely undergo examination. They simply become accepted as truth because they arrive accompanied by strong feeling. Yet feeling cannot determine reality. A mistaken judgment remains mistaken even when supported by intense emotion. Train yourself to become suspicious of immediate certainty whenever powerful emotion appears. This does not mean distrusting your capacity to reason. It means refusing to grant unquestioned authority to the first conclusion produced by habit. Ask yourself what evidence supports your interpretation. Ask whether another explanation might exist. Ask whether your present judgment strengthens wisdom or merely protects pride. These questions slow the mind just enough for reason to resume its rightful place. Many conflicts that seem unavoidable begin with judgments never carefully examined. One careless remark becomes an imagined insult. One forgotten promise becomes evidence of complete betrayal. One disagreement becomes proof that another person no longer cares. The emotions that follow often feel overwhelming, yet they rest upon conclusions accepted without discipline. Imagine how different your relationships become when every judgment passes through careful examination before becoming belief. Patience naturally increases because certainty decreases. Compassion grows because understanding replaces assumption. Fairness becomes easier because the mind no longer rushes toward accusation. This discipline also transforms the way you judge yourself. The undisciplined mind speaks harshly after every mistake. One imperfect decision becomes evidence that you are incapable of improvement. One failed attempt becomes proof that future effort is pointless. Such judgments do not strengthen character. They weaken it by replacing honest correction with unnecessary despair. A wiser approach begins by separating the action from the person. An action may have been mistaken. A judgment may have been careless. These require correction, not hopelessness. Reason seeks improvement rather than self-punishment. Every morning prepare your mind before the world begins presenting impressions. Sit quietly for a few moments and remind yourself that appearances often arrive wearing convincing disguises. Difficulty may appear unbearable while actually offering an opportunity for endurance. Criticism may appear destructive while containing valuable instruction. Delay may appear harmful while teaching patience. Praise may appear beneficial while quietly feeding vanity. Resolve not to accept appearances without investigation. Decide that throughout the day every important judgment will be examined before becoming belief. As the hours unfold, create deliberate pauses whenever emotion begins rising quickly. Do not fear silence during these moments. Silence allows reason to gather itself before impulse takes command. A few calm breaths often create enough distance for clearer judgment to emerge. During this pause, ask a simple question. What exactly am I judging right now? Identify the judgment instead of merely experiencing the emotion. Once the judgment becomes visible, it can finally be evaluated. You will discover that many emotional disturbances depend upon hidden expectations. You expected another person to behave according to your wishes. You expected success to arrive without repeated setbacks. You expected life to unfold according to carefully arranged plans. When reality refused these expectations, disappointment quickly transformed into agitation. Yet ask yourself whether these expectations were ever guaranteed. The world never promised complete agreement, uninterrupted progress, or perfect convenience. Reason therefore accepts reality before demanding emotional satisfaction from it. Be especially attentive when pride becomes involved. Pride often disguises itself as concern for justice, while secretly protecting self-importance. Someone questions your opinion, and pride immediately declares that respect has been withdrawn. Someone receives recognition you desired, and pride quietly transforms another person's success into your own dissatisfaction. Someone corrects your mistake, and pride interprets helpful guidance as humiliation. Unless these judgments are examined, emotion will soon command your speech and your conduct. The disciplined soul values truth more highly than wounded pride. Another important practice is learning to distinguish between physical sensation and mental interpretation. Physical discomfort may be unavoidable. Fatigue, illness, hunger, and pain belong to human experience, yet the mind often adds unnecessary suffering by declaring these experiences intolerable. Once again, emotion follows judgment. Endurance becomes possible when the mind refuses to exaggerate what the body experiences. This does not deny difficulty, it simply refuses to multiply it through careless thinking. Throughout the day, observe the words you use when describing events. Language often reveals hidden judgments before you consciously recognize them. If you repeatedly describe ordinary setbacks as disasters, your emotions will eventually believe your own exaggeration. If every inconvenience becomes unbearable, patience loses its foundation. Choose language that reflects reality instead of emotional intensity. Accurate speech supports accurate judgment. Accurate judgment supports inner stability. Do not attempt to eliminate emotion entirely. Such a goal misunderstands the work before you. Emotion itself is not the enemy. The true danger lies in allowing unexamined judgments to direct your actions. Compassion, gratitude, appropriate caution, and genuine joy all find their proper place when governed by reason. The disciplined soul does not become cold or indifferent. It becomes trustworthy because feeling no longer overwhelms wisdom. Practice this discipline even during moments that appear insignificant. A long line while waiting, an unexpected interruption, a misunderstanding at work, a delayed plan, a forgotten obligation. Each event offers another opportunity to examine judgment before emotion gains authority. Small victories prepare the soul for greater challenges. A person who learns patience during ordinary inconveniences is better prepared when genuine hardship arrives. As evening approaches, return to yourself with complete honesty. Review not only what happened during the day, but how you judged what happened. Where did assumption replace careful examination? Where did impatience arise from exaggerated expectation? Where did fear grow stronger because imagination outran reality? Where did reason quietly correct a false conclusion before emotion took control? These questions strengthen awareness because they reveal patterns that often remain invisible during busy hours. Do not become discouraged if you discover many careless judgments. Discovery itself represents progress. What remains hidden cannot be corrected. Every mistaken conclusion brought into the light loses part of its power. Every examined judgment weakens the habits that once governed your reactions without permission. Improvement begins not with perfection, but with increasing awareness guided by honest examination. You will gradually notice something remarkable taking place. Situations that once disturbed you deeply begin losing their influence, not because the world has become gentler, but because your judgments have become wiser. The same criticism no longer provokes immediate anger. The same uncertainty no longer produces overwhelming fear. The same inconvenience no longer ruins an entire day. Your freedom grows because reason now stands between impression and response. That quiet space becomes the birthplace of genuine self-government. Eventually, your relationships begin reflecting this inner transformation. You listen more carefully because assumption no longer interrupts understanding. You speak more thoughtfully because impulse no longer controls your tongue. You forgive more readily because judgment has become slower and more accurate. You remain steady during disagreement because your peace no longer depends upon immediate agreement from others. Every interaction becomes another opportunity to practice wisdom rather than defend emotion. Remember that the ruling part of your soul is strengthened every time you refuse to surrender your judgment without examination. Each careful pause is an act of inner courage. Each honest question asked before reacting is an expression of self-mastery. Each correction of a false conclusion protects the freedom of your mind. These victories rarely attract attention from the world, yet they quietly transform every part of your life because they reshape the source from which every action flows. So begin tomorrow with this single commitment. Do not promise yourself a life without emotion. Promise yourself a life where emotion never receives command before reason has spoken. Let every impression wait for examination. Let every judgment earn your agreement through truth rather than urgency. Let every response arise from deliberate understanding instead of automatic reaction. As this practice becomes constant, your mind will no longer be driven by appearances but guided by clear judgment, steady character, and the quiet strength that belongs to the person who has learned to think before feeling is allowed to rule. Number 6. Endure hardship with calm because virtue never depends circumstances. Hardship is not the moment when your character disappears. It is the moment when your character becomes visible. Many people believe they know themselves while life remains comfortable. They speak confidently about patience before they are delayed. They praise courage before they are frightened. They value fairness before they are treated unfairly. They admire self-restraint before desire becomes strong. Yet comfort reveals very little about the condition of the soul. Difficulty uncovers what ordinary days often conceal. When pressure arrives, your deepest judgments begin directing your actions without disguise. If those judgments have not been trained by reason, hardship will not create disorder within you. It will simply expose the disorder that has always been there. This is why you must stop asking why your life contains difficulty. The better question is what your present difficulty is asking of your character. Every challenge carries an opportunity hidden within it, not because suffering is pleasant, but because every hardship gives you another chance to practice virtue. If you refuse this opportunity, pain becomes empty suffering. If you accept it with disciplined judgment, pain becomes material for growth. The event itself does not decide which outcome follows. Your response does. The greatest mistake is believing that virtue depends upon favorable conditions. You imagine that kindness will become easier after your life becomes less demanding. You promise yourself greater honesty once fear disappears. You believe patience will naturally appear after people become more considerate. This thinking quietly postpones your moral life into a future that never arrives. Virtue has never waited for perfect circumstances because perfect circumstances have never existed. Justice practiced only when convenient is not justice. Courage shown only when fear is absent is not courage. Self-restraint exercised only when temptation disappears has never been tested at all. Look carefully at how the mind reacts whenever life refuses your preferences. A plan changes unexpectedly, the body becomes tired, someone disappoints you, financial pressure appears without warning. The first movement of the mind is often resistance. It silently declares that this should not have happened. From that judgment, complaint begins growing. Soon the event itself becomes only a small part of your suffering. the larger burden comes from your refusal to accept reality as it presently stands. You fight against what already exists instead of directing your strength toward what can still be done. Acceptance does not mean approving every hardship. It means refusing to waste precious energy wishing reality had chosen another path. Once an event has occurred, your attention must turn immediately toward the only question that still belongs to you. How will I conduct myself now? This question restores authority to the proper place. You cannot erase what has happened. You can still determine whether bitterness or wisdom governs your next action. Many people unknowingly surrender their freedom during difficult seasons because they allow external conditions to decide the quality of their inner life. They conclude that happiness must wait until the problem disappears. They postpone peace until every uncertainty has been resolved. They postpone gratitude until abundance returns. In doing so, they hand authority over their own soul to circumstances that have never belonged to their control. The disciplined person refuses this exchange. He understands that while comfort may come and go, the opportunity to practice virtue remains available every single day. Imagine facing disappointment without immediately asking why fortune has singled you out. Instead, ask what excellence requires from you in this very moment. Perhaps endurance is required, perhaps honesty despite fear, perhaps patience during uncertainty, perhaps compassion towards someone whose own suffering has made them difficult. Every hardship carries its own appropriate virtue. Your responsibility is not to remove every obstacle. Your responsibility is to meet each obstacle with the quality of character it demands. One of the quiet disciplines worth practicing every morning is preparing the mind for unavoidable difficulty before it arrives. Sit for several moments before the day's activity begins. Remind yourself that today will not unfold exactly according to your plans. There may be delays, there may be misunderstandings, there may be discomfort, there may be disappointment. None of these possibilities should surprise you because they belong to ordinary human life. By expecting life's uncertainty without resentment, you prevent the mind from being shaken each time reality behaves like reality. This preparation does not produce pessimism, it produces steadiness. The unprepared mind treats every inconvenience as a personal attack. The prepared mind recognizes difficulty as part of the landscape through which every human being must travel. Since hardship is expected, energy is no longer wasted on shock or complaint. Instead, it becomes available for thoughtful action. Notice what happens whenever pain enters your experience. Almost immediately, the imagination begins adding stories that extend beyond the present moment. A setback becomes permanent failure. One difficult season becomes evidence that nothing good remains ahead. One disappointment becomes the measure of your entire future. The event may last only hours, yet the imagination stretches it across months and years. Reason quietly interrupts this habit. It refuses to judge tomorrow using only today's discomfort. It remains faithful to the present responsibility without inventing unnecessary conclusions. You must also examine your relationship with comfort itself. Comfort is pleasant when received with moderation. It becomes dangerous when treated as a necessity. Once the mind decides that ease is essential for happiness, every inconvenience begins appearing intolerable. The smallest difficulty feels larger than it truly is because the soul has forgotten how to endure. A life devoted entirely to avoiding discomfort slowly weakens the very qualities needed when genuine hardship finally arrives. For this reason, practice voluntary simplicity from time to time. Choose occasions to live with less than you could possess. Perform difficult duties without searching for immediate reward. Accept ordinary inconvenience without seeking constant relief. These practices are not punishments. They are exercises that remind the soul it possesses greater strength than comfort would have you believe. When unavoidable hardship eventually arrives, it finds a character already familiar with disciplined endurance. Be especially careful during seasons of success. Ease often weakens vigilance more quietly than suffering ever could. When everything proceeds according to your wishes, it becomes easy to believe that your peace depends upon favorable circumstances. Then the first unexpected setback feels unbearable because your confidence has become attached to comfort instead of virtue. Continue practicing moderation even during prosperous times. Continue examining your judgments even when life feels generous. A disciplined soul prepares during calm seasons for storms that may one day arrive. Hardship also reveals whether your concern has been directed toward appearance or reality. Some people fear difficulty mainly because they imagine how others will judge them. They worry about losing status more than losing integrity. They fear public failure more than private dishonesty. Such priorities create endless anxiety because reputation always depends upon minds beyond your authority. Character never does. When hardship strips away admiration or success, it also reveals where your deepest loyalty truly rested. Whenever suffering tempts you toward resentment, pause before allowing that feeling to settle. Ask yourself whether resentment has ever improved judgment. Has bitterness ever strengthened courage? Has complaint ever increased wisdom? The answer remains unchanged regardless of circumstance. These reactions consume attention while producing nothing of lasting value. They weaken the very qualities hardship invites you to strengthen. Refusing resentment does not deny pain. It prevents pain from becoming the ruler of your conduct. Another valuable practice is shortening the distance between challenge and purposeful action. When difficulty appears, avoid spending long periods asking why it happened. Instead, identify the next honorable step available to you. Perhaps someone requires your patience. Perhaps unfinished work still deserves your attention. Perhaps your own thoughts require correction before speaking further. Action rooted in reason prevents the mind from becoming trapped inside endless emotional repetition. There will be times when your strength feels limited. During such moments, avoid measuring yourself against impossible standards. Virtue does not require dramatic achievement every day. It requires faithful conduct according to your present capacity. If illness limits your body, practice patience. If grief visits your heart, practice honesty without despair. If uncertainty surrounds your future, practice trust in reason rather than anxious speculation. Excellence always adapts itself to present reality without abandoning principle. At the end of each day, examine not whether hardship visited your life, but how you received it. Did inconvenience immediately produce complaint? Did disappointment weaken your commitment to fairness? Did uncertainty tempt you toward dishonesty? Did suffering become an excuse to neglect your responsibilities? Or did each challenge become another opportunity to strengthen your ruling judgment? These questions reveal genuine progress far more accurately than measuring comfort or success. Do not expect the world to become easier simply because you have chosen discipline. Storms continue arriving, bodies continue aging, relationships continue facing strain, plans continue changing without permission. None of these realities disappear through philosophy. What changes is the person meeting them. The same circumstances that once produced panic gradually produce thoughtful action. The same hardships that once inspired complaint begin calling forth patience. The same uncertainty that once controlled your thoughts loses much of its authority because your confidence now rests upon character rather than circumstance. You will gradually discover that calmness is not something granted by favorable fortune. Calmness grows from repeated acts of disciplined judgment performed under difficult conditions. Every time you remain honest despite pressure, your confidence deepens. Every time you choose fairness despite disappointment, your soul becomes steadier. Every time you refuse unnecessary complaint while carrying a heavy burden, endurance grows stronger. These quiet victories cannot be taken from you because they exist within the quality of your own character. The world often measures strength by visible achievement, influence, or possession. Reason measures strength differently. It asks whether your principles remain unchanged when comfort disappears. It asks whether justice survives frustration. It asks whether self-restraint survives temptation. It asks whether courage survives uncertainty. These questions reveal a strength untouched by fortune because its foundation lies within the disciplined soul rather than changing conditions. There will come a time when you look back upon difficulties that once seemed impossible to bear. You may realize that they removed illusions you had long protected. They taught patience where impatience once ruled. They revealed attachments that quietly controlled your peace. They exposed habits of complaint you had mistaken for honesty. They invited virtues that comfort never required. Whether hardship leaves you wiser depends less upon what happened than upon how faithfully you practiced reason while passing through it. So when the next challenge arrives, do not ask first how quickly it can be removed. Ask how wisely it can be met. Let every difficulty remind you that virtue has never depended upon favorable conditions. Let every disappointment become another invitation to strengthen your character. Let every season of uncertainty teach you that peace belongs not to those whose lives remain easy, but to those whose judgments remain disciplined. Endure with calm because your highest good has never rested in changing circumstances. It has always rested in the steady practice of wisdom, justice, courage, and self-restraint, regardless of what fortune chooses to place before you. Number 7. Direct your attention toward present duties with unwavering discipline. The greatest part of your life is not lost through great failures. It is lost through scattered attention. Your body may remain in the present, yet your mind continually abandons the duty standing before it. One moment it wanders into memories that cannot be changed. The next it races toward futures that have not arrived. Between these two places, the present moment is neglected, and with it the only opportunity you possess to practice wisdom. You cannot live yesterday again. You cannot act within tomorrow yet. Your character is always shaped only by what you choose in this present moment. Every time your attention escapes from the duty before you, you surrender the only place where virtue can be practiced. Many people believe they are overwhelmed because life asks too much of them. Often the deeper problem is different. Their attention has been divided into countless unnecessary concerns. They carry tomorrow's burdens before tomorrow exists. They continue arguing with people who are no longer present. They imagine conversations that may never happen. They replay disappointments that no longer possess any power except the power granted by repeated remembrance. Meanwhile, today's responsibilities wait patiently while the mind exhausts itself everywhere except where action is possible. The disciplined soul refuses this waste. It understands that attention is one of the most valuable possessions entrusted to a human being. Whatever receives your sustained attention gradually shapes your inner life. If your attention continually feeds resentment, resentment grows stronger. If it continually feeds fear, fear gains authority. If it continually returns to duty, reason becomes steadier. The direction of your attention quietly becomes the direction of your character. Therefore, guard your attention with greater care than you guard your possessions, because stolen attention gradually becomes a stolen life. There is a quiet temptation that appears every morning. Before beginning necessary work, the mind begins searching for escape. It seeks distraction disguised as preparation. It chooses easy activity instead of meaningful responsibility. It convinces itself that there will be more suitable conditions later in the day. Hours pass without deliberate purpose, and then regret quietly arrives. The problem was never the lack of time. The problem was the unwillingness to give full attention to what reason had already declared important. Each morning begin with a simple act of inner order. Before responding to demands from the outside world, ask yourself what responsibilities belong to you today. Do not think about every possible task awaiting you during the coming weeks. Do not measure yourself against future expectations. Identify only the duties that genuinely belong to this day. Once they become clear, give yourself completely to them without dividing your attention among imagined concerns. A focused mind performs ordinary duties with extraordinary steadiness. When you begin an honorable task, remain with it fully. Resist the habit of constantly looking beyond the present effort toward future results. The mind often abandons today's work because it becomes impatient for tomorrow's reward. It asks whether success is guaranteed before effort has even matured. Such thinking weakens discipline because it places attention where action is impossible. Your responsibility is not to possess the outcome before it arrives. Your responsibility is to perform today's duty with complete integrity. Observe how often unnecessary suffering begins because your attention leaves reality. A conversation becomes difficult, and instead of listening carefully, you begin constructing arguments for future disagreements. A challenge appears at work, and instead of completing the next useful step, your thoughts leap toward imagined failure months ahead. A relationship enters a season of uncertainty, and rather than practicing honesty today, your mind invents countless endings that exist only within fear. Attention scattered across imagined futures cannot faithfully serve present responsibilities. Reason calls you back each time this happens. It asks only one question: what action deserves my complete attention right now? This question cuts through confusion because it removes everything beyond your authority. You cannot complete tomorrow's labor today. You cannot repair yesterday's mistake through endless reflection. You can only act faithfully within the present opportunity placed before you. This limitation is not a burden. It is a source of freedom because it releases you from responsibilities that never belonged to you. Many people quietly confuse busyness with discipline. They fill every hour with movement while neglecting thoughtful purpose. They rush from one activity to another without asking whether these actions strengthen their character. Constant activity without clear judgment produces exhaustion rather than excellence. The disciplined person moves differently. Every action begins with intention. Every responsibility receives careful attention. Every unnecessary distraction is recognized for what it truly is, an invitation to abandon what matters most. Pay close attention to interruptions throughout the day. Some interruptions deserve your response because justice or kindness requires it. Others merely invite your curiosity without contributing to virtue. Learn to distinguish between them. Not every thought deserves pursuit. Not every message deserves immediate attention. Not every opinion deserves examination. A disciplined mind chooses carefully where attention will be invested because it understands that every unnecessary distraction quietly steals time from honorable action. Another important practice is completing one responsibility before allowing the mind to become occupied by the next. Scattered attention weakens judgment because the soul never fully inhabits any duty. Whether you are speaking with another person, performing your work, caring for your family, or reflecting quietly, remain entirely present with that responsibility. Divided attention often creates careless mistakes that later require additional effort. Undivided attention expresses respect both for the task itself and for your own capacity to act with excellence. Be especially watchful when anxiety attempts to disguise itself as responsibility. The anxious mind repeatedly revisits future possibilities, believing this constant rehearsal will prevent disappointment. Yet repeated worrying rarely prepares you for reality. It simply drains the strength needed for today's work. Preparation belongs to reason. Endless mental repetition belongs to fear. Once you have performed every action presently available, release what remains beyond your influence. Return your attention immediately to the next duty that reason places before you. There will be moments when another person's behavior threatens to capture your entire attention. Someone criticizes you unfairly, someone refuses cooperation, someone behaves with unnecessary hostility. At such moments, the undisciplined mind begins revolving endlessly around another person's conduct. Hours may be consumed analyzing motives that cannot be known with certainty. Meanwhile, your own character receives little attention. Turn inward instead. Ask whether your own response remains just, truthful, patient, and measured. Another person's actions belong to their responsibility. Your conduct remains entirely your own. Practice shortening the distance between recognition and action. Once reason clearly identifies the honorable course, avoid unnecessary delay. The longer the mind lingers after recognizing its duty, the more opportunities impulse finds to interfere. Begin the work quietly. Speak the truthful words calmly. Complete the necessary responsibility faithfully. Action performed promptly strengthens trust in your own judgment, because it teaches the mind that reason will not be ignored once it has spoken. Throughout the day, create brief moments of stillness, where you intentionally gather your scattered attention. Pause before beginning a new responsibility. Let previous concerns fall away instead of carrying them into the next task. If disappointment occurred earlier, leave it behind before speaking with another person. If success arrived, do not allow pride to distract you from present obligations. Meet each responsibility with a mind refreshed by deliberate attention rather than burdened by lingering mental noise. You will notice that many desires compete for your attention without deserving it. The desire for constant entertainment, the desire for immediate praise, the desire to know how everything will unfold, the desire to avoid every form of discomfort. These desires continually pull the mind away from meaningful labor. They promise satisfaction while quietly weakening discipline. Each time you refuse these unnecessary invitations, your capacity for focused attention becomes stronger. There is also great value in performing ordinary responsibilities with complete seriousness. Washing, cleaning, writing, studying, listening, keeping promises, and speaking honestly may appear insignificant when compared with dramatic achievements. Yet character is formed within these ordinary actions because they occupy most of human life. Whoever neglects simple duties while dreaming about extraordinary accomplishments misunderstands the path of virtue. Excellence grows from faithful attention to what is already before you. As evening approaches, examine not only what you accomplished, but where your attention spent the day. Did you allow distraction to govern your choices? Did you waste valuable hours feeding unnecessary worry? Did you remain fully present while serving others? Did your thoughts repeatedly escape toward matters beyond your influence? This review should not become an occasion for regret alone. Let it become instruction. Every honest observation prepares the mind to choose more wisely tomorrow. Gradually, you will experience an important transformation. Responsibilities that once felt overwhelming begin appearing manageable because you no longer carry every burden at once. The future loses much of its power to frighten you because your attention returns repeatedly to today's work. The past loses much of its power to imprison you because you refuse to revisit it without purpose. The present becomes sufficient because it contains everything required for virtuous action. Others may continue living with scattered minds, continually chasing distractions while neglecting the duties nearest to them. Do not imitate this habit. The quality of your life depends less upon the number of opportunities presented to you than upon the quality of attention you bring to each opportunity. A single action performed with complete integrity strengthens the soul more than countless unfinished intentions. Eventually, you will understand that unwavering discipline is not harshness toward yourself. It is respect for the limited time entrusted to you. Every hour deserves careful use because no hour returns once it has passed. Every conversation deserves thoughtful presence because it may never occur again. Every responsibility deserves honest effort because it is another opportunity to shape your character according to reason. So when tomorrow begins, refuse to scatter your attention across fears, fantasies, and unnecessary concerns. Gather your mind deliberately. Place it upon the duty immediately before you. Perform that duty with patience, honesty, fairness, and complete concentration. Then move calmly to the next responsibility without carrying unnecessary mental burdens from the last. Continue in this manner throughout the day. By directing your attention toward present duties with unwavering discipline, you will discover that the peaceful life is not found by escaping responsibility, but by giving yourself fully to each honorable action while it is yours to perform. Number 8. Master your desires before pursuing external measures of success. Most people begin their pursuit of success by looking outward. They measure what they lack, compare themselves to others, and imagine that fulfillment will arrive once external conditions align with their expectations. This is the earliest form of error in judgment. It places the cause of peace in things that are unstable by nature. External outcomes are never fully obedient to your will. They depend on fortune, on other people, and on countless shifting circumstances beyond your authority. When your desires are directed outward without restraint, your mind becomes dependent on forces that will never consistently obey you. This dependence is the hidden root of frustration that follows even great achievement. Examine your own thinking with honesty. How often do you believe that success will finally complete you? How often do you imagine that recognition, wealth, approval, or position will settle the unrest within your mind? These thoughts feel persuasive because they promise relief without inner effort. Yet they quietly teach you to ignore the only domain where true stability can ever be formed. A person governed by unchecked desire is never free, even if he possesses everything he once dreamed of. His peace always waits beyond the next accomplishment, and therefore it never arrives. Desire itself is not the enemy. The problem begins when desire is directed toward things that do not belong to your control, and when it is allowed to command your judgment without examination. A disciplined mind first asks whether the object of desire strengthens character or weakens it. If desire pulls you toward external validation, it must be restrained. If it pulls you toward unnecessary comparison, it must be questioned. If it pulls you toward pleasure without wisdom, it must be examined before any action follows. Reason must always stand between impulse and behavior. Before pursuing anything in the external world, you must first govern the internal world of expectation. Ask yourself what you are truly seeking. If you seek approval from others, you place your self-worth in unstable hands. If you seek comfort above all else, you weaken your capacity to endure difficulty. If you seek constant success without failure, you abandon the reality of human life. These desires create a fragile foundation because they depend on conditions that cannot be guaranteed. A stable life is built in the opposite direction. It is built by refining desire until it aligns only with what is virtuous and within your power to choose. Each morning offers an opportunity to reset this inner direction. Before you begin engaging with the demands of the day, examine what your mind is reaching toward. Are you already chasing outcomes that have not yet occurred? Are you already comparing your progress with imagined standards set by others? Are you already attaching your worth to results you cannot fully control? If so, pause and return your attention inward. Remind yourself that your first responsibility is not achievement but clarity of judgment. Without clarity, even success becomes unstable. The world continuously invites you to measure yourself externally. It presents images of accomplishment, status, and recognition as if they define a meaningful life. Yet when you observe closely, you will notice that those who rely entirely on external validation remain restless even after attaining what they desired. Their minds immediately search for the next measure of approval because desire has not been disciplined. It simply moves from one object to another without ever resting. A life directed by such movement never finds completion. To correct this, begin separating what you can influence from what you cannot influence every time desire appears. You can influence your judgment, your effort, your honesty, your patience, and your discipline. You cannot fully influence outcomes, recognition, or the behavior of others. When desire attaches itself to what lies outside your control, suffering becomes unavoidable because expectation will repeatedly collide with reality. When desire is anchored only in what belongs to your authority, stability becomes possible regardless of external outcome. Consider how much energy is wasted in imagining future success without examining present conduct. The mind often leaps toward visions of achievement while neglecting the discipline required to support them. It desires results without accepting the inner transformation those results require. This is why many people feel stuck despite constant ambition. They pursue external progress while leaving internal disorder untouched. A disciplined life reverses this pattern. It begins with mastery of desire before any serious pursuit of external success is undertaken. Mastery of desire does not mean suppression of ambition. It means purification of intention. Ask yourself whether your ambition arises from a desire to contribute or from a desire to be seen. Ask whether your goals are shaped by reason or by comparison. Ask whether your motivation remains steady when external approval is removed. These questions reveal whether desire is governed by wisdom or by impulse. Only desire guided by reason can lead to a stable form of success. During the day, observe how quickly desire shifts direction. One moment it seeks comfort, the next it seeks recognition, the next it seeks avoidance of difficulty. This instability reveals that desire, when unexamined, is not a trustworthy guide. It reacts to circumstances rather than evaluating them. Reason must therefore assume authority. Before acting on desire, pause and ask whether the action contributes to virtue or merely to temporary satisfaction. If it contributes to virtue, proceed without hesitation. If it does not, decline it without regret. You will also notice that much suffering arises not from lack of success, but from excessive attachment to imagined outcomes. The mind creates a specific vision of how life should unfold and then suffers when reality takes a different shape. Yet life has never promised obedience to imagination. It unfolds according to its own nature. The disciplined soul does not demand that reality conform to expectation. It adjusts expectation to align with reality while preserving virtue as the only constant standard. When desire becomes disciplined, action becomes clearer. You no longer chase every opportunity simply because it promises external reward. You begin evaluating opportunities based on whether they strengthen your character. Some opportunities may offer wealth but weaken integrity. Others may offer recognition but demand dishonesty. Others may offer comfort but reduce resilience. A disciplined mind does not confuse gain with goodness. It understands that external success without inner order is incomplete and often unstable. There is also a subtle form of desire that must be carefully examined. It is the desire to control how others perceive your progress. This desire quietly influences many decisions. It encourages exaggeration of success. It discourages admission of struggle. It creates anxiety whenever recognition is absent. Yet the judgment of others is not within your authority. When you depend on it, your peace becomes vulnerable to countless minds you cannot govern. The disciplined soul releases this dependence and focuses instead on conduct that deserves respect, regardless of whether it is noticed. As you practice this discipline, you will begin to notice a shift in your relationship with effort. Work becomes less driven by craving for external reward and more guided by commitment to internal excellence. You act because the action is right, not because it guarantees recognition. You persist because discipline is valuable in itself, not because it guarantees immediate results. This transformation gradually removes anxiety from effort, because success is no longer the sole justification for action. Virtue becomes sufficient reason. In moments of difficulty, desire often becomes louder. It demands immediate relief. It insists that discomfort should end at once. It urges shortcuts that bypass necessary effort. At such times, return to reason. Ask what remains within your control. You may not control the presence of difficulty, but you always control your response. You may not control external pressure, but you control whether you respond with panic or with steadiness. By anchoring yourself in what belongs to you, desire loses its power to distort judgment. Even success itself requires careful examination. When external goals are achieved, desire quickly attempts to expand its reach. Satisfaction becomes temporary because new expectations immediately replace old ones. Without discipline, success does not end desire, it multiplies it. This is why many who achieve outward success still feel incomplete. Their desires were never trained to rest in reason. They were only trained to pursue new objects without reflection. True mastery occurs when desire becomes aligned with virtue rather than external accumulation. In this state, success is welcomed without dependence, failure is endured without collapse, recognition is received without attachment, absence of recognition is accepted without bitterness. The mind remains steady because its foundation is no longer external outcome, but internal discipline. As evening arrives, reflect on how desire influenced your actions throughout the day. Where did it guide you wisely, and where did it distort your judgment? Did it lead you toward unnecessary comparison? Did it create impatience when results were delayed? Did it encourage actions driven by appearance rather than integrity? Or did you manage to align it with reason in key moments? This reflection is not meant to produce regret, but to refine awareness. Awareness is the beginning of mastery. Over time, consistent examination of desire reshapes the entire structure of the mind. External success no longer holds absolute authority over your sense of worth. You begin to recognize that peace depends not on what is acquired, but on how desire is governed. A person who masters desire before pursuing external measures of success becomes difficult to disturb because nothing outside him can fully dictate his inner condition. So begin tomorrow not by increasing desire but by refining it. Let reason evaluate every intention before action follows. Let virtue determine whether pursuit is worthy. Let control over self precede any attempt to shape the external world. In doing so, you will discover that true success is not defined by accumulation, but by the quiet strength of a mind that no longer depends on what it cannot control. Number 9. Practice grateful acceptance and transform adversity into inner strength. Most people wait for life to become easier before they feel gratitude. They believe appreciation is something reserved for favorable circumstances. This is a misunderstanding that quietly weakens the soul. Gratitude is not a reaction to comfort. It is a disciplined judgment about reality itself. When gratitude depends on ease, it disappears the moment difficulty arrives. When gratitude is grounded in reason, it remains steady even under pressure. The mind that cannot find anything worthy of acceptance in hardship has already surrendered control to its own judgments, not to the events themselves. You must begin by examining how often your suffering is created not by events, but by resistance to events. Something unwanted happens, and immediately the mind declares that this should not be so. From that judgment arises complaint. From complaint arises frustration. From frustration arises a belief that life is unjustly arranged, yet the event itself remains neutral. It is your interpretation that adds emotional weight. The disciplined mind recognizes this early and interrupts it before it grows into full resentment. Grateful acceptance does not mean approving every circumstance. It means refusing to waste the present moment in opposition to what already exists. Once an event has occurred, resistance cannot undo it. It only multiplies inner conflict. Reason asks a different question. It asks what remains possible now. It asks how this situation can be met with wisdom rather than complaint. It asks what virtue this moment demands. This shift transforms hardship from an obstacle into material for training the character. Consider how quickly the mind forgets the countless things that already support your life. Breathing continues without your command. The body carries you through each day without requiring constant instruction. The mind is capable of reflection, learning, and judgment. Relationships exist that offer meaning even when imperfect. These realities are often ignored when attention is consumed by what is missing or what has gone wrong. Gratitude begins by restoring awareness of what is already present before adding judgment about what is absent. When adversity arrives, the untrained mind interprets it as interruption. The disciplined mind interprets it as instruction. This difference in interpretation determines whether difficulty weakens or strengthens you. A delayed plan can become an exercise in patience. A loss can become an exercise in detachment. A disappointment can become an exercise in clarity. None of these meanings exist in the event itself. They arise from your chosen response. Acceptance allows you to choose the response that strengthens character rather than weakens it. Each morning offers an opportunity to prepare for this discipline. Before the day begins fully, remind yourself that nothing external is guaranteed to align with your expectations. Plans may change, people may act unpredictably, effort may not immediately produce results. These possibilities are not threats to your peace unless you decide they are. By expecting uncertainty without resistance, you reduce the shock that often turns minor difficulty into unnecessary suffering. As the day unfolds, notice how frequently complaint begins in subtle form. It may not appear as loud frustration, it may appear as quiet dissatisfaction with circumstances that do not match preference. It may appear as internal resistance when tasks feel inconvenient. It may appear as impatience when results take longer than desired. Each of these reactions begins with a judgment that reality should be different from what it is. When you catch this judgment early, you regain the opportunity to choose a wiser response. Gratitude becomes powerful when it is practiced deliberately rather than only when conditions feel favorable. In moments of difficulty, deliberately identify something within the situation that can be used for growth. If you are dealing with delay, use it to practice patience. If you are facing criticism, use it to examine your own conduct more carefully. If you are experiencing loss, use it to strengthen your understanding of what is truly within your control. This does not deny difficulty, it transforms its meaning. There is also a deeper form of acceptance that requires examination of expectations themselves. Many frustrations arise because the mind holds silent assumptions about how life should unfold. These assumptions are rarely questioned. They exist beneath awareness, quietly shaping emotional reactions. When reality deviates from these assumptions, discomfort arises. By bringing these expectations into awareness, you weaken their unconscious authority. You begin to see that many of your demands upon life were never grounded in reason. When adversity appears, avoid the immediate impulse to label it as harmful. That label is often premature. What appears harmful in the moment may later reveal itself as development. What appears beneficial may later reveal itself as distraction. The disciplined mind does not rush to final judgment about events that are still unfolding. It remains open to understanding rather than fixed in premature conclusion. This openness preserves inner stability even when external conditions are unclear. One of the most important practices is separating the event from your interpretation of the event. A situation occurs. That is fact. The meaning you assign to it is judgment. Suffering often comes from confusing the two. Once this distinction is clear, you gain the ability to interrupt unnecessary emotional escalation. You can observe the event without immediately accepting the narrative that the mind attempts to attach to it. Another essential discipline is recognizing how quickly emotional resistance narrows perception. When you resist what is happening, attention becomes fixed on what should not be happening. This narrowing prevents you from seeing available actions. Acceptance broadens attention. It allows you to see what remains possible instead of remaining trapped in what is already decided. This shift is not passive resignation, it is active clarity. In moments of difficulty, pause before reacting. Allow a brief space between event and response. In that space, examine your judgment. Ask whether your interpretation is accurate or simply habitual. Ask whether complaint improves anything or only drains attention. Ask what response would reflect wisdom rather than impulse. This short interruption prevents emotion from fully taking command and restores authority to reason. There will be times when hardship feels heavy and immediate acceptance feels difficult. In such moments, do not demand perfection from yourself. Begin with small acknowledgement. Recognize that resistance is occurring. Recognize that judgment is being formed. Recognize that you are still capable of choosing your response even under pressure. Even this level of awareness begins the process of inner steadiness. Grateful acceptance becomes stronger through repetition. Each time you choose not to complain, you weaken the habit of resistance. Each time you choose to see opportunity within difficulty, you strengthen resilience. Each time you redirect attention from what is wrong to what can still be done rightly, you build a more stable inner foundation. Over time, this practice changes how the mind interprets all events, not just difficult ones. Even success requires gratitude that is not dependent on attachment. When things go well, avoid becoming dependent on favorable conditions. Acknowledge success without assuming it defines your worth. Receive good fortune without becoming entitled to its continuation. This prevents the mind from collapsing into distress when conditions inevitably change. Gratitude remains steady because it is grounded in recognition of reality, not dependence on its stability. As evening arrives, reflect on where acceptance was practiced and where resistance appeared. Notice moments when complaint arose unnecessarily. Notice where difficulty was transformed into useful action. Do not judge yourself harshly in this review. Its purpose is clarity, not punishment. Each observation strengthens awareness of how judgment shapes emotional experience. You will gradually see that adversity has not been the true source of your suffering. The deeper source has been resistance to what is already present. When resistance is reduced, even challenging situations lose much of their emotional weight. The same external conditions remain, yet your experience of them changes significantly because your judgment has become more aligned with reality. Over time, grateful acceptance becomes less of an effort and more of a natural response. You begin to recognize that every situation contains something that can be met with virtue. Nothing is entirely wasted unless you allow it to be. Difficulty becomes a training ground for patience. Loss becomes a reminder of impermanence. Delay becomes a space for reflection. Uncertainty becomes a call for trust in reason. Life becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about responding wisely to whatever appears. This is the foundation of inner strength, not the removal of hardship, but the transformation of its meaning through disciplined judgment. A mind trained in grateful acceptance does not depend on external conditions for stability. It draws strength from its own capacity to interpret reality with clarity. In this way, adversity no longer breaks the soul, it refines it, and through that refinement you discover a steadiness that no circumstance can take away. Number 10. Live each day as your final chance for virtue. You live each day as if time belongs to you without limit. This is the first illusion that weakens judgment. You assume that another opportunity will always arrive tomorrow, that delayed action can be corrected later, that neglected virtue can be restored whenever you finally choose to focus. Yet no one has ever been granted certainty over the next day. You are given only the present moment, and even that arrives without guarantee that it will continue. When this truth is ignored, life becomes a sequence of postponed intentions rather than lived discipline. The soul grows careless not because it lacks knowledge, but because it refuses to treat time with seriousness. Examine your ordinary thinking. How often do you delay what reason already knows should be done? How often do you postpone honesty, restraint, effort, or correction under the assumption that there will be a more suitable moment later? This habit quietly destroys urgency. It convinces you that virtue is always available in the future, while comfort is always acceptable in the present. Over time, this creates a divided life, where intention and action never fully meet. The result is regret disguised as planning. To live each day as your final chance for virtue is not to live in fear of death. It is to live with complete clarity about what truly matters. If today were the last opportunity to shape your character, you would not waste attention on trivial concerns. You would not surrender hours to distraction. You would not allow resentment to occupy your thoughts. You would not speak carelessly or act without reflection. You would treat every decision as final because, in truth, none of them are guaranteed to be repeated. The undisciplined mind avoids this awareness because it demands responsibility in the present. It forces you to stop negotiating with yourself. It removes the comfort of endless delay. It confronts you with the reality that virtue cannot be practiced abstractly. It must be chosen now, in this exact situation, under these exact conditions. There is no other place where character can be formed. Begin your day with this recognition. Before engaging with any task, remind yourself that this day is not rehearsed. There is no second version of it. Every moment will either strengthen or weaken your character depending on how you respond. This awareness does not create anxiety when properly understood. It creates precision, it sharpens attention, it removes unnecessary hesitation, it replaces vague intention with immediate responsibility. The mind often resists urgency because it prefers comfort in delay. It tells you that important matters can wait until conditions improve, until motivation increases, until clarity feels complete. Yet conditions rarely become ideal. Motivation fluctuates, and clarity is always partial. Waiting for perfect readiness is simply another form of avoidance. Virtue does not require perfect conditions. It requires present decision. As you move through the day, observe how frequently your attention is drawn away from what matters most. Small distractions appear harmless individually, yet collectively they erode the seriousness with which you approach life. A moment spent without intention is not neutral. It is a moment that could have been used for discipline but was not. Over time, these moments accumulate into a life that feels scattered and unfulfilled, not because of great failure, but because of consistent neglect of the present. When faced with a decision, reduce it to its essential question. Does this action reflect reason or does it reflect impulse? Does it strengthen character or weaken it? Does it belong to what is within my control or does it depend on external approval? These questions simplify life by removing unnecessary complexity. They return attention to what is always available to you, which is your judgment and your response. You must also learn to recognize how often emotional reactions attempt to claim authority over your conduct. Anger, frustration, fear, and desire often appear quickly and demand immediate expression. Yet these reactions are not commands, they are signals that require examination. Between feeling and action there must always be space for judgment. Without that space, behavior becomes reactive rather than rational. A life governed by reaction cannot maintain stability. To live as if today is your final opportunity for virtue, you must treat each interaction with others as meaningful. Words spoken without care cannot be retrieved. Actions taken without reflection cannot be undone. Even small moments carry weight because they contribute to the overall quality of your character. Whether speaking, listening, or acting, remain aware that you are shaping yourself continuously through each choice. There is also a quiet danger in assuming that moral effort can be postponed because life appears stable. Stability often creates the illusion that discipline is less necessary, yet it is precisely during stable periods that neglect begins. Without urgency, attention weakens. Without difficulty, vigilance fades. Without pressure, the mind drifts toward comfort. This is how character erodes silently, not through crisis, but through ease. Therefore, do not wait for hardship to remind you of seriousness. Bring seriousness into ordinary conditions. Do not wait for loss to awaken gratitude. Bring gratitude into what is already present. Do not wait for failure to demand reflection. Bring reflection into every action while it is still possible to improve it. This is how a disciplined life maintains continuity rather than depending on external disruption to awaken awareness. Each evening, examine how you used the time that was given to you, not with judgment meant to produce regret, but with clarity meant to refine future conduct. Ask whether you acted according to reason or drifted into habit. Ask whether you treated time as something valuable or as something unlimited. Ask whether you lived with awareness that this day could not be repeated. This reflection is not about perfection, it is about alignment between understanding and action. Over time, this practice transforms how you relate to time itself. Days are no longer treated as background events between moments of excitement or distraction. Each day becomes a complete opportunity for meaningful conduct. The urgency of virtue replaces the illusion of endless opportunity. You begin to recognize that life is not composed of infinite chances, but of a limited number of present moments, each requiring attention. As this awareness deepens, procrastination loses its authority. The habit of delaying what matters becomes increasingly difficult to sustain because you no longer believe in the promise of unlimited future time. Instead, you act when reason calls for action. You speak when truth requires expression. You restrain yourself when impulse demands reflection. Life becomes simpler because it is governed by present clarity rather than imagined future conditions. Even ordinary routines begin to carry greater significance. Daily responsibilities are no longer mechanical repetitions. They become opportunities to practice patience, honesty, discipline, and fairness. The quality of your attention determines the quality of your character. When attention is present, even simple actions contribute to inner strength. When attention is absent, even important actions lose their value. You may notice that awareness of mortality brings a sharper perspective to priorities. Many concerns that once seemed important gradually lose their weight. The desire for unnecessary approval weakens. The need for constant comparison diminishes. The urgency to accumulate external validation fades. What remains is the steady importance of living according to reason and virtue while there is still time to do so. This perspective does not diminish life, it clarifies it. It removes unnecessary distractions that obscure what is essential. It allows you to see that the only truly urgent matter is the quality of your character in this present moment. Everything else is secondary. Everything else depends upon conditions that may or may not arrive. Only your judgment remains fully within your control at all times. When challenges arise, do not assume they are interruptions to your life. Treat them as opportunities that belong to this limited day. There may not be another moment to respond with patience instead of anger, with honesty instead of evasion, with discipline instead of avoidance. Each difficulty is therefore not an obstacle to living well, but a direct occasion for practicing it. You will eventually understand that living each day as your final chance for virtue is not a burden but a liberation. It removes the illusion that life can be endlessly deferred. It eliminates the fantasy that moral effort can be postponed without consequence. It places full responsibility in the present where it has always belonged. From this understanding arises a life that is steady, intentional, and aligned with reason. When the day ends, you should be able to say that you did not treat time as unlimited. You used it with awareness. You did not allow unnecessary emotion to govern your actions. You did not abandon discipline in favor of convenience. You did not postpone what conscience required. Whether the day was easy or difficult matters less than whether it was lived with clarity. If you continue this practice, something profound gradually changes. Life becomes less about waiting for improvement and more about expressing virtue in real time. Each day becomes complete in itself rather than dependent on future correction. And within that completeness, you discover a form of strength that does not rely on external conditions. This is the meaning of living as if today is your final opportunity for virtue. Not despair, not pressure, but clarity, a clear recognition that the only place where your life can be shaped is here, and the only time available for shaping it is now.